thinking about where the team is now. Like, they're not very good. They don't have a lot of pieces in play. But you start with that quarterback. You got Becton, the big left tackle. If somehow, well, I guess you would have to give up the number 2 pick for Penei Sewell. You couldn't get him. But you start to build some stuff around Deshaun. And as far as personally for Deshaun, New York City would be big, man. If he wins here, I just know for the short time that I actually played here and won what it means. And so imagine if he played, 10 years here and actually won a chip and won a Super Bowl. All I did was go to the AFC Championship game. And I know the way that I'm treated in the city. I know.
Why do we assume that Deshaun Watson wants to be under the lights, like the big New York City lights? I know,
I don't think we assume. It's what ifs, Jay. It's not assuming. It's just
I know,
what if.
But everybody keeps going, come to New York and build your brand and imagine what we could do here since Joe Namath. Like, that's not what every player wants. Like, and I think there are other situations out there that maybe don't put as much pressure on him that New York City would put on him. I mean, I just, look, I get that we talk about the Jets a lot. I get that we talk about the Giants a lot. I get that we're in New York City. But New York City is not a place that everybody wants to be. There's also a lot more trouble sometimes that comes along with New York when you don't win here because we eat our own. And so I think it's something that if you're Deshaun Watson, you have to think about when you start looking at other options. Is that maybe Miami, right? Playing with Brian Flores. Hey, can we get an Allen Robinson in free agency? Is that a difference maker considering how their defense is? There are other options that maybe don't bring as much attention or pressure to you right away to get the job done yesterday, especially if you're not equipped with the pieces to do so.
Well, if Nick Caserio and the Houston Texans don't want Tua in whatever 3rd pick, 4th pick, 5th pick that Miami is looking to give them, and the Jets are willing to surrender more based on Adam Schefter, and the Jets have more to offer, and that's out there because I'm sure Adam's been told by somebody that they have more to offer and they would be willing to offer more, then he wouldn't have gone with it. You got to think about where the Texans are at. What are they going to get for Deshaun? And Deshaun, if he wants to be moved at some point, if you want to be moved, there's only a few landing spots that make sense because the Texans need something back in return. Yes, New York may not be for everybody, and maybe it's not for Deshaun, but these are all hypotheticals and what ifs. If it makes sense, then maybe Deshaun wants to embrace New York and be the quarterback in this city and taking the Jets to the promised land. I don't know. I'm just using hypotheticals and what ifs.
From Clemson to the NFL, Deshaun Watson has always been more driven, brought to you by Goodyear, helping you discover the road ahead. Goodyear, more driven. We should obviously mention a team that's got draft capital is going to be in prime position because that's the one thing the Texans lack at this point. So if you've lost DeAndre Hopkins and you presumably will lose Deshaun Watson, you're basically starting over from scratch. And the best way to do that in the NFL for any of the 32 is to have some draft capital. This morning, our Twitter question is essentially where would be the best landing spot for Deshaun Watson. The leader in the clubhouse right now is the Dolphins at 36%, with obviously Tua going back the other way. Jay and Key have been making the case for the Jets. Key more strongly. The 28% have said Gang Green, 20% have said the Bears, 16% have picked another team. For once, it's not me, tongue planted firmly in cheeky.
I haven't heard that one in 2021.
Yeah.
No, it's been about 2 shows. It's been about 2 shows, Zubin. You've been doing well.
But this time, Andre Whitaker is going to go tongue planted firmly in cheek, answering this question with this, right? So the question is, where should Deshaun land? Again, 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776, Key J and Z on Twitter. Andre Whitaker, his answer, Key, you like this, Jay? Texans. Because they've made numerous bad decisions over the last few years. They'll keep him just to tick him off. But John McClain, our Houston expert who was with us last week, did essentially say, ain't no way, no how they're moving him. That's according to him, but I know what you've always said. What's that?
Bruce Willis?
Bruce Willis. We won't be moonlighting. It's too early. No. I will say, though, that you've always said with a player that doesn't want to be there no matter what, whether they're disgruntled, they are going to be moved at some point. But it remains to be seen. I mean, this is an unbelievable 25-year-old player in the prime of your career available. Dan Orlovsky, our 12-year NFL quarterback, was with us this morning and said, if you're one of a handful of teams, like he got Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady, he pinpointed about 7 teams like Green Bay, Seattle. If you're one of the other 25 teams that doesn't have just a rock-solid future Hall of Famer to be best player in the game, that you should be looking at Deshaun Watson.
You can't touch Cincinnati because they just drafted a guy.
Yep.
You can't touch Herbert. But everybody else
Right, and those teams we mentioned, right?
is all touchable except the teams that you mentioned.
Think about that.
Even the Rams to a degree, right?
Right.
It's like, but who's going to take Jared Goff off your hand? That's the, that's like,
With that money.
and I don't think the Rams even have the capital to even get in the conversation, but it's just like what makes the most sense. If the New Orleans Saints could get a hold of him, they'd take him in a heartbeat, but they'll never be able to. I mean, they would have to give up the draft for the next 20 years. It's not going to happen. They would have to pull a Mike Ditka. You can have it for the next 20 years. Miami would be perfect, right? It's a destination. Tua's there. They got some picks. It's a city that makes sense, and so in the end, Raiders. I mean, it's all sorts of situations that you can think about.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.